other countries know as chicken empanadas, in Puerto Rico we call them pastelillos de pollo, and they are delicious. They are one of the many street food fritters you can find sold around the island. Today I'm going to show you how to make them. But first, let's start with the ingredients that you'll need. Let's start with the ingredients that you're gonna need for the dough. The first thing you need is 1 3/4 cups of all-purpose flour, half a teaspoon of salt, 1 tablespoon of achote oil, which I'll tell you later if you don't have it what to use, 2 tablespoons of vegetable shortening, and half a cup of hot water. Now let's look at the ingredients you need for the shredded chicken. We need 1 pound of boneless chicken thighs, half a yellow onion, 1/4 of a red bell pepper, and 1/4 of a green bell pepper. For the seasoning, we need half a teaspoon of adobo seasoning, 1.5 teaspoons of sazon, and as always, our sofrito is always a must. You will need 1 tablespoon of sofrito and 1 of tomato sauce, half a teaspoon of chicken bouillon, 1/4 teaspoon of ground oregano, half a teaspoon of garlic paste, and 2 tablespoons of oil. Now let's make the dough because this part of the recipe takes longer than the chicken. In a large plate or container, add the water and salt. Remember that the water must be hot. I heated my water in the microwave for about a minute. Then we'll add the vegetable shortening, which you could substitute with lard. Then what I like to do is to slowly add the flour. With a fork, I mash the shortening so it integrates with the flour. And since the water is hot, this will make it easier for the shortening and the flour to integrate. Now, when making the dough, I generally make it on the counter or the table to avoid having to clean another dish. But in this case, it's different because we're going to be using achote oil. So I don't want the table to get stained. This is because I have a wooden table. But if you're making the dough in a glass or a metal table, the oil won't be a problem for you. Here, after mixing with the fork, I decided to switch to a spatula to make it easier to mix everything. What we want here is to incorporate all that loose flour into a ball that is already forming. The good thing about doing this first part in a bowl is that the dough won't stick to your hands and you will work more easily. Plus, it will be easier on the cleanup. When your dough looks like this with almost no loose flour, you'll add the achote oil. What I like to do to make sure I get all the oil and clean the container that held the oil is to take a little amount of the dough and use it to clean the container, almost as a napkin. This way, nothing is wasted. Then what we have to do is to mix it until all the oil is incorporated, or at least until the bowl doesn't seem wet with the oil. Now, you could also add the oil at the same time you add the shortening. I have done it both ways, and either way you do it is fine. Now, if you don't have achote oil, you just have to use regular oil. It could be whatever oil you like. You could use coconut oil, canola oil, or even vegetable oil. But you'll still need to add some color. And for that, what we're going to do is we're going to add a packet or 1.5 teaspoons of sazon seasoning. But you could also choose not to add anything if you like. But in my case, I like to add the achote or sazon because it not only adds color but also flavor. Now we have to knead our dough for 10 minutes. As you can see, I didn't add any flour to the table because thanks to the oil in the recipe, the dough won't stick too much to the table or your hands. But if you still feel like your dough is really wet, just add half a teaspoon of flour to your table before kneading it. And after the 10 minutes are up, what we're going to do is to make a ball with the dough, and it should kind of look like this, a very soft and smooth ball. Next, we'll place the dough in a bowl and cover it with plastic wrap or foil. And we're gonna let it rest for 30 minutes while we prepare the chicken, which will take about 20 to 25 minutes. By the time we finish making the chicken, the dough will be ready to shape. The first thing we need to do is to chop the vegetables. Cut the peppers first into strips and then into 1/4 inch cubes. You're gonna chop both of the peppers the same way. Make sure they're not too large so they can cook and get very soft. But if you prefer a slightly firm pepper, you can always chop them into larger cubes. Then peel the onion and also dice it to small pieces. The shape isn't really that important, it's just a matter of preference. If you want to add more vegetables, you could chop them now too. When you're done, put everything in a small plate and set it aside for later. Next, what we have to do is to clean the chicken. I like to remove most of the excess fat that the thighs always have. I sort of scrape off the fat that is stuck to it and simply cut off the rest. You'll repeat the same step until you've cleaned them all. And once you're done, your chicken thigh thighs should look like this, with not a lot of extra fat and very clean. Now, if you don't like chicken thighs or you don't have any, you can always use chicken breast. And the good part about using the chicken breast is that it generally tends to have almost no fat. And so you won't have to do this step. So that means less work for you. But I personally like using chicken thighs because they are the juiciest part of the chicken and very forgiving. It's kind of hard to cook them dry, but you could use whatever you prefer. It really doesn't matter. Then place the chicken on a plate to season it. Add the adobo, the sazon, and the oregano. Mix everything until all the chicken is well coated. And in this recipe, you don't need to let your chicken marinate because we're gonna season the chicken and cook it right away. And trust me when I say it's delicious, you do not need to wait to cook it. Next, we'll need a frying pan or a small skillet to cook the chicken. Add the 2 tablespoons of oil and turn up the heat to high. When you notice that the pan is hot, add the chicken thighs. But be careful because the oil will start to jump and it could burn you. You'll see me here moving the thighs around to make space. But then I don't move them again because we want to let the chicken sear for 6 minutes. Don't move them so they can brown well. After 6 minutes, then we flip the thighs. Reduce the heat to medium high and we cook them for another 6 minutes. This way, they'll get that nice brown color that makes the chicken look so delicious. Now, if you want to make this recipe, but you don't want to put in the hard work, I have a solution for you. You could either use leftover chicken or buy a whole roasted chicken. Then all you have to do is shred it and then saute with all the ingredients we'll use for the thighs. Here we're adding the vegetables, the sofrito, the tomato sauce, and the garlic paste to the chicken thighs. Then we're going to stir everything together. Then I noticed that earlier I didn't add chicken bouillon, so I added it now because the chicken will still absorb the flavor as it cooks in the vegetable juices, which then will absorb all the flavor from the bouillon. Then I stir and arrange the chicken thighs so they are not on top of the vegetables, so they could cook touching the pan. After this, we're going to cook for another 8 minutes, but this time we're going to cook the chicken covered. This is so the steam helps cook the chicken on the inside and make it tender and juicy. After the chicken is cooked, we're going to let it cool for at least 5 minutes, and then we're going to shred it. Here, I'm going to use a pair of forks first, but you could use different tools to do this. You could use a stand mixer, and it really does the job quite well. Or you could use one of those claws that they use to separate meat. In the description box below, I'll leave you the links so you can see what I'm talking about. After struggling with the forks, I got tired, so I put the forks aside and continued shredding the chicken with my hands since it was faster anyways. This shredded chicken is one of those recipes that you can make a big batch and then make other recipes. It is more or less the same as ground beef in the sense that it's super versatile. You could use it to make many main dishes like burritos, lasagnas, sandwiches, or to serve it over rice or any vegetables. And the best part is that you can make this chicken one day, freeze it, and then when you want to use it, just simply take it out the freezer, thaw it, and heat it up. After we shred the chicken, we'll put this onto a plate, or you could just leave it in the pot and take the meat from there to fill the pastelillos and avoid dirtying another dish. The important thing is not to let those vegetables go to waste because they give the meat a really delicious flavor. And look how delicious and how juicy the meat looks. Now let's take our dough to make the disc for our Puerto Rican empanadas. First, you want to sprinkle about half a teaspoon of flour before placing the dough. We want the dough to be thin but not too thin. It should be about 1/8 of an inch thick or about 2/4 thick. Then using a rolling pin, we'll roll out the dough. Now what we first want to do here is we roll out the ball from top to bottom. Flip the dough over and continue rolling it from top to bottom and side to side. We don't want to thin out the dough too much because it could break while we make the pastelillos or they can explode when it's fried. Then we need to make the empanada discs. And for this, there are many tools. Now, there's round cutters that are used to make these discs. And I'll leave you the link below just in case you want to get them. In my case, since I didn't have any tools for this, I used this margarita glass. I rubbed some flour on the rim so the dough wouldn't stick to it. Then carefully, I placed the glass on top of the dough, pressed it down, and moved it side to side so the disc came out clean. This dough makes about 12 of these small pastelillos. Each disc will measure about 4 inches. But how big or how small will depend on the size of the mold that you use to make them. And just so you know, this is the same dough that is used to make the Puerto Rican empanadillas. If you don't know, empanadillas are a little larger than pastelillos and they have a braided edge. But that's really the only difference because the dough and the filling used in both of the empanadillas and pastelillos are the same. Then after making the disc, remove all the excess dough and simply join it together. Then you just flatten the dough again and cut more disc until you have no more dough left. Now what I do is I take each disc and roll it out again just a little bit before filling it. I do this by rolling it side to side and up and down, flip it over and repeat the process again. You can make these discs differently by separating the dough into balls and then you flatten each one. Do it however you find it the easiest. I just like doing it this way. And if it happens that the dough folds like it happened to me, it's okay. Just keep rolling it until you have more or less a circular shape again. And here you can see how the plantilla disc should turn out. Not too thin, not too thick. Next, we're going to fill each disc with about 2 tablespoons of chicken. We can't add too much because the empanadas will split open when they are fried. Next, we want to close the disc. And what I like to do first is to seal the edge with the tip of my fingers. I press it down gently so I can combine both sides. Then, using a fork, I'm going to close it all the way. We just need to press down the edge with the fork on one side, turn over the pastelillo, and then seal the edge again. We do this to make sure they don't open while we fry them. And just so you know, you could find these pre-made empanada discs, but finding them will depend on where you live. After we seal our pastelillos, look how pretty they look, and they will look even better once they are fried. Now, if you want to make this and turn it into empanadilla de pollo, meaning give it that braided typical style of empanada, all you have to do is braid the edge. And with this same dough, you could also make Puerto Rican taquitos, which is not like the Mexican kind. Taquitos as in another empanada, they have a more rectangular shape, and we call them taquitos, but it's basically same dough and same filling as the pastelillos or empanadillas. And remember that you could prepare this recipe, freeze it, and then you're good to go. But to store them, they first have to be raw, or rather it is better to store them raw. What I do here is wrap each one with parchment or wax paper, and then I store them all together in a Ziploc bag. Then I write down the date that they were made and what they're filled with, and you're good to go. Once you finish sealing the pastelillos, you'll need a big pot of oil over high heat. But the amount of oil really is going to depend on the size of your pot or pan that you're using to fry. I like to add enough oil so the pastelillos float. Here I used about 2 cups of oil. Then we fry them for 2 minutes on each side or until golden brown. Now, if you don't want to fry these, you could always cook them in the air fryer. Just spray them with cooking spray before cooking them so they could get nice and crispy. And look how these turn out. The dough almost melts in your mouth because of how soft it is. It's like a puff pastry but soft, not hard. And the dough absorbs all the juices from the chicken and it tastes delicious. This is a great recipe not only to make at home but also to make for parties and gatherings. They are perfect for game night too. I'll leave the recipe link in the description below, and if you like the video, give it a like and subscribe. Buen provecho, and I'll see you on the next video.